In the heart of medieval France, the small town of Jumièges in Normandy was gripped by fear as a pack of ferocious wolves began terrorizing the region. Known as the wolves of Jumièges, these predators attacked livestock, and in some cases even humans, spreading panic and leaving a trail of devastation in their wake. This narrative explores the history of the wolves of Jumièges, the community's desperate attempts to protect themselves, and the enduring legacy of these fearsome animals in French folklore.
Jumièges, located on the banks of the Seine River in Normandy, is best known for its ancient abbey, a symbol of peace and spirituality. However, during the harsh winters of the 15th century, the town became synonymous with a very different kind of legend, one of fear and survival against the wolves that roamed the region. At the time, wolves were a common presence in the forests of Europe, and their threat was a stark reality for rural communities. The wolves of Jumièges are said to have emerged during a period of particularly harsh winters when food was scarce. Driven by hunger, the wolves left their usual hunting grounds in the dense forests and began encroaching on human settlements. The proximity of the wolves to the town, combined with the frequency and ferocity of their attacks, set them apart from the typical wolf encounters of the era and elevated them to a level of notoriety that would be remembered for centuries.
The first reports of the wolves of Jumièges date back to the winter of 1450. As the snow covered the fields and forests, making it difficult for the wolves to find their usual prey, they began targeting the town's livestock. Farmers awoke to find their sheep and cattle slaughtered, the animals' bodies savagely torn apart. The losses were devastating for the already struggling community, where livestock was a crucial source of food and income. As the attacks continued, the wolves grew bolder. There were accounts of wolves attacking in broad daylight, a sign of their desperation. Soon the townspeople feared for their own safety. Children and the elderly, who were often left alone while others worked the fields, were particularly vulnerable. Stories began to circulate of wolves dragging people away, and the once tranquil town of Jumièges became a place of dread and terror.
Desperate to protect themselves, the people of Jumièges organized hunting parties to track down and kill the wolves. The town's men armed themselves with spears, axes, and bows, setting out into the forests surrounding the village. However, these hunts often proved dangerous and fruitless. The wolves were cunning and elusive, able to blend into the dense woods and strike when least expected. In addition to the hunts, the community took measures to fortify their homes and barns. Thick wooden barriers were erected around the livestock pens, and people began traveling in groups, especially at night. The local clergy, believing the wolves were a divine punishment or the work of the devil, led prayers and processions, seeking divine protection against the predators.
As the attacks continued, the wolves of Jumièges became the subject of legend and folklore. Some believed the wolves were possessed by evil spirits, sent to punish the town for sins or to test their faith. The others thought the wolves were shapeshifters, werewolves able to change from human to beast at will. These stories, while rooted in fear, added to the mystique of the wolves and their almost supernatural ability to evade capture. The wolves' notoriety spread beyond Jumièges, drawing the attention of neighboring towns and even the nobility. Local lords, whose own lands and livestock were threatened, offered rewards for the heads of the wolves. Professional hunters and trappers were called in to assist, but despite these efforts, the wolves remained a persistent and terrifying presence.
The terror of the wolves of Jumièges finally began to subside as the winter of 1451 came to an end. Warmer weather brought more abundant food sources for the wolves, drawing them back to their natural hunting grounds in the forests. Additionally, the intensified hunting efforts and fortifications around the town likely contributed to reducing the number of attacks. There are accounts of a particularly large and fearsome wolf being killed near Jumièges around this time, believed by many to be the leader of the pack. So his death was celebrated as a victory for the town, and the attacks ceased shortly thereafter. Whether this was the true end of the wolves of Jumièges, or simply the natural result of changing conditions, the community finally began to breathe a sigh of relief.
The wolves of Jumièges left a lasting impact on the collective memory of the town and the surrounding region. For years, the story of the wolves was passed down through generations, a reminder of the fragility of human life and the ever-present dangers of the natural world. The legend became part of the local folklore, symbolizing both the resilience of the community and the thin line between civilization and wilderness. The tale of the wolves of Jumièges also reflects the broader relationship between humans and wolves in medieval Europe. Wolves, often seen as symbols of both fear and freedom, were hunted to near extinction in many parts of the continent as human populations grew and forests were cleared for agriculture. The story of Jumièges serves as a window into a time when humans and wolves were forced to share the same spaces, often with deadly consequences.
To the story of the wolves of Jumièges is a chilling reminder of a time when the boundaries between the human world and the wild were not as clear-cut as they are today. These predators, driven by hunger and desperation, terrorized a community and became part of a legend that endures to this day. As we reflect on this story, we are reminded of the resilience of the people of Jumièges and the complex, often fraught relationship between humans and the natural world.